college football season is right around the corner. We're anticipating things to come, how the season is going to unfold, who is going to win conference titles, and make the first ever 12-team playoffs. Now, ESPN just dropped their top 100 college football players entering the 2024 season. It's always a fun list to read. But if you're still getting your news from ESPN.com, you're either likely an SEC fan or your team is just not big enough to have its own blog or multiple YouTube channels. But admittedly, I do enjoy this list to learn about some players that I have overlooked in the previous seasons, to learn about some potential breakout stars and players from other conferences and minor conferences that dot this list. So it's a lot of fun to read, admittedly. To no one's surprise, Ohio State led the way in the Big Ten with 8 players making the top 100. Michigan came in second with 5, and the Oregon Ducks, I believe, had 3. And, of course, there were other Big Ten teams as well. Purdue had 1, Wisconsin had 1, Minnesota had 1. Iowa also had 1, and, of course, the USC Trojans. Weird to call them a Big Ten member, but they are now. They had 2 as well, with Miller Moss and their wide receiver, Zachariah. Now, I already see the defense on MGO blog and around the social medias. Okay, fine, Ohio State once again has a more talented roster. Well, they can win the recruiting and off-season battles. We'll beat them on the field. And that's a fair argument. You have taken it to us the last 3 years, or at least 2 out of the last 3 years you took it to us. Last year was quite the close battle. It came down to the wire. But 2/3 of that staff is gone. The core identity is gone from that team. You still have tremendous defenders, and obviously they made this list. Kenneth Grant, and then Graham was the ultimate bull-wrecking guy for the Wolverines on the defensive front. He's going to be a force and a menace that Ohio State fans are honestly a little bit terrified of. And then, of course, you got the all Mr. Everything Will Johnson back at cornerback, who I believe is going to contend with Denzel Burke and maybe a cornerback out from Oregon. I forget his name right now, but he made this list as well. Jabbar Muhammad for first-team All-Big Ten. And obviously, Burke and Johnson have the accolades and the career stats to potentially vault them to first-team All-American this season. Now, in order for the Buckeyes, going down the list, you had Denzel Burke, Tyleek Williams, the defensive tackle. Of course, Donovan Jackson, the offensive guard, the right guard. Trevion Henderson and Judkins were right next to each other in the rankings, 34 and 33. Then, of course, Jack Sawyer, Emeka Egbuka, the all-Mr. Everything wide receiver for the Buckeyes. And, of course, Mr. Caleb Downs out of the transfer portal from Bama after an All-American season in his freshman year down in Tuscaloosa. The one notable Buckeye left off the list is, of course, JTT. But in all honesty, stat-wise, he doesn't belong to be in the top 100. Now, I hope he proves his haters and doubters wrong. I'm not one of them. I'm rooting for the kid, obviously. I want to see him produce. But let's be honest, outside of 22 game versus Penn State, he has not lived up to the hype as a 5-star number 1 recruit in the nation out of the state of Washington. Donovan Edwards and, of course, Colson Loveland round out the top 5 for the Wolverines. Now, me specifically on Edwards, I don't think he's an every down back. He's apparently put on weight this offseason, but that's just kind of fall talk and fall camp, hyping up the season, hyping up the fans. I don't believe he has the abilities to be an every down back. He has the speed and athleticism, and he is a great athlete. Don't get my words twisted. He is a phenomenal athlete. I think he's a good running back, not a great running back. I believe Khalil Mullins will be the RB1 by midseason. And, of course, Loveland tore us up last year with Eichenberg and Steele Chambers and linebacker. That's why Ohio State put Sonny Styles and Cody Simon at linebacker. And that is the counter to Colson Loveland. And we'll see how that works out on November 30th in the shoe. Then, of course, the Oregon Ducks. October 12th, the Buckeyes head to Eugene and Austin Stadium for the first time. And we're looking forward to that matchup versus Dylan Gabriel, Tez Johnson, the wide receiver, and, of course, the cornerback Jabbar Muhammad made this list as well. I think it was somewhere in the 80s. Going to be a formidable matchup versus the Ducks. They play each other well, and the strengths are the same, and the weaknesses are the same for these Ohio State Buckeyes and the Oregon Ducks. So it's a highly anticipated matchup. And now I'll speak briefly about the USC Trojans. Miller Moss, obviously we didn't get to see too much of him these last 2 years behind Caleb Williams, the Heisman Trophy winner from 2 years ago. He balled out in the bowl game in the Liberty Bowl versus Louisville. He's hoping to build off that performance as well and lead the Trojans in a new conference and a new era of Trojan football. And then, of course, Zachariah Brandt, the speed demon freshman wide receiver, broke onto the scene last year and made the top 100 list as well for ESPN. Buckeyes have the secondary contain them. We don't face the Trojans this year, but who will, unless we meet in the Big Ten title game, of course. But I believe Zachariah Brandt and Miller Moss will have a lot to say in the Big Ten race this season. Don't want to leave off the Penn State and Nittany Lions either. They had two guys make the top 100 list, and of course, linebacker last year, Abdul Carter, moving to defensive end this season, and of course, the explosive back, Kaytron Allen. I'm surprised Nick Singleton didn't make this list either, but Allen has been the slightly better back for Penn State this year. Of course, the Buckeyes travel to Happy Valley in what's going to be a big-time showdown in that amazing stadium. Thank goodness it's not a night out this year. The number one overall player was James Pierce, the defensive end out of Tennessee. And I'm surprised it's not Trey Moore because he had considerably better stats than Pierce did last season. 14 sacks compared to 9.5. Now, it's not all about sacks, it's about tackles for loss. They both had an interception, so that's an interesting thing there, too. And I did want to make a correction. The Iowa Hawkeyes actually had 3 guys on this list. My bad. Of course, they're all defensive players. We know that. No offensive player from Iowa is ever going to make the top 100 list in college football. But, yeah, it's going to be an exciting season. Who was snubbed on this list? Who would you add? Who's going to have a breakout season that didn't make the list that you need to inform me about? Who's going to be on the radar at the end of the season that wasn't present before the season started? Let me know down below. Go Bucks and God bless. We'll see you on the next one. See you tonight for the live at 8:30.